There's someone in your life right now who does something most people find completely baffling. When their birthday approaches, they don't post countdowns on social media, they don't plan parties or drop hints about what they want. In fact, they might not even tell you it's their birthday until weeks after it's passed. And when you discover this, you feel a strange mix of confusion and concern. Are they depressed? Antisocial? Just really humble? Here's what's fascinating. Psychology suggests these people aren't any of those things. They're displaying a specific constellation of personality traits that most of us completely misunderstand. And what's even more intriguing is that these traits might actually indicate something we'd never expect about how their minds work. But before we dive into what makes these people tick, let me ask you something. When was the last time someone made you feel uncomfortable by celebrating you? Maybe they sang happy birthday at a restaurant and your face went hot. Or perhaps they threw you a surprise party and your first instinct was to run. If you felt that, you already know part of what we're about to explore. The introversion connection. Let's start with the most obvious explanation, but not for the reasons you think. Yes, many people who downplay birthdays are introverts. But here's where it gets interesting. It's not actually about being shy or antisocial. Research shows that introverts recharge by spending time alone or in quiet environments, which makes a traditional birthday party feel less like a celebration and more like an endurance test. Think about it from their perspective. You're sitting at a table and suddenly 20 people are staring at you, singing off-key, expecting you to perform joy. For someone whose brain literally processes stimulation differently, this isn't celebration, it's overstimulation. But the deeper layer is this. Introverts often prefer meaningful connection over performative interaction. A friend of mine, let's call her Emma, once told me she'd rather have a 2-hour conversation with one person she loves than receive 100 happy birthday messages from acquaintances. The birthday ritual, with its forced small talk and surface-level interactions, feels fundamentally at odds with how she experiences connection. And here's the twist that most people miss. This preference isn't about avoiding people. It's about protecting something more valuable to them, authentic connection. Which brings us to our next insight. The authenticity principle. People who treat birthdays as normal days display what psychologists call a strong authenticity orientation. They're not following a script someone else wrote about how joy should look. Psychology suggests that these individuals are comfortable in their own skin and don't seek external validation. But what does that actually mean in practice? It means they've done something most of us struggle with our entire lives. They've separated their self-worth from other people's attention. Think about the mechanics of a typical birthday. We post photos, count likes, measure who remembered us and who forgot. We're essentially collecting data points about our value to others. But people who downplay birthdays have already answered that question internally. They know their worth isn't determined by the volume of celebration. There's a research finding that's particularly striking here. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who are more content and satisfied with their lives tend to engage less in social comparison. They're not measuring themselves against others, which means they don't need the annual validation ritual. But this creates an interesting paradox. You'd think someone who doesn't celebrate their birthday might feel lonely or disconnected. Yet, the opposite is often true. And the reason why reveals something profound about human psychology. The emotional maturity factor. Here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Psychological studies suggest that emotionally mature individuals tend to be more comfortable with the passing of time and the process of aging. They don't need a grand celebration to validate their self-worth or existence. But what is emotional maturity, really? It's not just about being calm or rational. It's something deeper. Research shows that emotional maturity, demonstrated through emotional regulation, actually gets better with age. People who treat birthdays casually often possess this quality earlier than their peers. Think about what a birthday really represents: the passage of time, the accumulation of years, the movement toward mortality. Most of us need the party, the cake, the distraction from that reality. But emotionally mature individuals can sit with that truth comfortably. They don't fear aging because they're not deriving their identity from their youth or their timeline. I knew someone who, on his 40th birthday, went hiking alone. When I asked him about it later, he said something that stuck with me. "I spent the day thinking about everything I've learned. The party would have been about everyone else making me feel good about getting older. But I already feel good about it." That's emotional maturity in action. The empathy paradox. Now, here's something that might surprise you. People who avoid birthday attention often aren't thinking about themselves at all. They're thinking about you. Those who downplay their birthdays often do so out of consideration for others, understanding that not everyone can afford expensive gifts or lavish parties, and they never want their friends or family to feel obligated or strained. This is a form of empathy most people never notice. But it goes deeper. Some people who minimize their birthdays have a heightened sensitivity to others' discomfort. They can feel when someone is forcing enthusiasm, when a gift giver is stressed about whether their present is good enough, when a friend feels obligated rather than genuinely excited. And that awareness becomes more uncomfortable than the lack of celebration. There's also a fascinating dynamic around mixed emotions. People who treat birthdays as ordinary days often experience what researchers call emotional complexity, the ability to hold multiple feelings simultaneously. They might be grateful for another year while also feeling the weight of unmet goals. They might love their friends while also feeling drained by social expectations. Rather than performing pure joy for everyone else's comfort, they honor the full spectrum of what they're feeling. The control principle. Here's where we hit something crucial that explains a lot of birthday avoidance. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that individuals with a high need for personal control tend to be more proactive, take more initiative, and are more likely to influence their environment rather than being passive or reactive. Birthday celebrations, especially surprise parties, strip away that control entirely. Imagine this. You've structured your life in a way that works for you. You've created routines that protect your energy, relationships that feel authentic, boundaries that keep you balanced. Then someone decides they know how you should celebrate your existence, plans it without asking you, and expects you to be grateful for the violation of your autonomy. If someone expresses disinterest in celebrating their birthday, the worst thing you can do is throw them a surprise party. Instead of feeling special, they will feel frustrated and misunderstood. This isn't about being ungrateful. It's about needing agency over your own experiences. People with high personal control aren't trying to be difficult. They're protecting something essential to their well-being, the ability to shape their own life on their own terms. The simplicity philosophy. There's a pattern that emerges when you study people who downplay birthdays. They often value simplicity across their entire lives. Psychology suggests that a preference for simplicity often indicates a mindful and present approach to life. These individuals are likely to appreciate the here and now rather than constantly chasing after more. They've discovered something most of us spend decades learning. Less can genuinely be more. But this isn't about minimalism as an aesthetic. It's about something deeper, a fundamental difference in what generates meaning. Individuals who value experiences over material gifts often downplay their birthdays, seeking meaningful interactions and personal growth over tangible tokens of celebration. I watched this play out with a colleague who, instead of having a birthday dinner, spent the day volunteering at a local shelter. When people asked why, she simply said she wanted to mark the day by being useful rather than celebrated. That's not self-deprecation, it's a different value system entirely. These individuals have figured out that the anticipation, planning, and aftermath of a big celebration often generates more stress than joy. Meanwhile, a quiet day doing what they genuinely enjoy, reading, hiking, creating something, leaves them feeling more fulfilled.
The independence indicator. Here's a trait that ties everything together: fierce independence. People who treat their birthday like any other day often exhibit a strong sense of independence, not relying on others to make them feel special or appreciated. Psychology suggests these individuals have high self-reliance and feel comfortable being alone. But this independence creates an interesting social dynamic. When you don't need others to validate your existence through birthday celebrations, you're free to enjoy relationships without the hidden ledger of obligation. You're not keeping score of who remembered, who forgot, whose gift was thoughtful enough. You're just present with people because you choose to be, not because social protocol demands it. There's also something powerful about not anchoring your self-celebration to one day per year. These individuals often practice what you might call continuous birthday energy. They celebrate their existence every day by living according to their values. They don't need the calendar's permission to feel worthy of joy. The birthday blues and protection mechanism. Now we need to talk about something more complex. Not everyone who skips birthdays is doing so from a place of confidence and maturity. For some, it's a protection mechanism. Birthdays can invoke a complex mix of emotions, stirring up feelings of anxiety and melancholy, known as the birthday blues. People who experience this often prefer to downplay their birthdays to avoid these feelings of unease. Birthdays can stir up uncomfortable thoughts about time passing, missed opportunities, or looming expectations. The avoidance of birthday celebrations is partly an avoidance of what psychology calls temporal self-comparison, measuring yourself against your past and future selves. I remember talking to someone who admitted they stopped celebrating birthdays after a difficult year. Each birthday had become a reminder of goals not reached, relationships not maintained, a version of themselves they hadn't become. The celebration felt like highlighting failure rather than honoring existence. And there's another layer. Some people fear those around them won't be able to give as much love as they'd like. It can be extremely painful not to hear from a parent or family member on that day, prompting people to avoid celebrations altogether. If you never announce your birthday, you never have to face who forgot. The cultural and philosophical dimension. Some people treat birthdays as ordinary days because they've adopted a particular philosophical stance. They see birthdays like Valentine's Day, an arbitrarily chosen date that society has decided to glorify. They question why one's birth date should be celebrated when every day is equally valuable. This isn't cynicism, it's actually a form of radical presence. If every day matters equally, then you don't need one special day to justify your existence or celebrate your life. You're already doing that daily by showing up authentically, treating people well, growing incrementally. There's also the upbringing factor. If a child grows up in a household where birthdays are not emphasized, they may carry that mindset into adulthood. This phenomenon is common in some cultures. What one culture treats as essential, another treats as optional. The real question. After exploring all these traits, introversion, authenticity, emotional maturity, empathy, need for control, simplicity, independence, and various protection mechanisms, we arrive at something important. There's no single type of person who treats birthdays as normal days. Some are quietly confident, others are deeply introverted. Some are protecting themselves from disappointment or temporal anxiety. Some simply never learned to make a big deal of it, and many embody a combination of all these traits. What they share, though, is this. They've all made a conscious decision about how they want to mark their existence. And in a world that constantly tells us how we should celebrate, feel, and perform our lives, that decision itself is significant. The real insight isn't about what's wrong with birthday enthusiasts or what's right with birthday minimalists. It's about recognizing that celebration is deeply personal. The important thing is accepting what you feel, whether you celebrate it or not, spend it alone or with people, enjoy it to the fullest, or do something to make it pass quickly. So what do we do with all this information? If you're someone who loves birthdays and doesn't understand those who don't, remember that their approach isn't a rejection of joy or connection. It's often an expression of a different kind of joy, a different way of connecting. The friend who doesn't want a party might treasure a handwritten note or a quiet walk together more than you realize. If you're someone who treats birthdays as ordinary days, you're not broken, antisocial, or ungrateful. You're expressing a legitimate personality configuration that psychology recognizes and validates. You have every right to celebrate or not celebrate in the way that feels authentic to you. And if you're somewhere in between, fluctuating based on the year or your current life phase, that's normal too. These traits aren't fixed categories. They're tendencies that shift with our circumstances, our growth, and our understanding of ourselves. The deeper truth is this: how we approach birthdays reveals how we approach everything. Do we seek external validation or internal satisfaction? Do we prefer performance or authenticity? Do we measure our worth by others' attention or by our own values? These aren't just birthday questions, they're life questions. Every single day, people are making choices about how visible they want to be, how much they'll conform to social expectations, and what actually generates meaning for them. Birthday preferences are just one window into that ongoing negotiation between self and society, between who we are and who the world expects us to be. And maybe that's the real celebration, not the one day a year, but the continuous practice of knowing yourself well enough to honor what you actually need, regardless of what everyone else thinks you should want.